sad if she did. I mean, Rogue's going to take away the pedal. That's a fairly interesting takeaway considering the fact that most of the mummerings in the competitive scene have been that Best Chuck has not really ever optimized his gameplay for this hero. That being said, it is something they just don't want to deal with, so they're going to drop that off the board, and the Lance comes through. Grace is available for Rogue with this Lance ban.
So why is TSM baiting Rogue into picking Grace? That's the real question here.
I'd have no idea.
This seems very bold to me. I mean, maybe they have some other Poison Shiv character that they have their eyes on. Maybe an Adagio with the Rhyme?
Well, so I lied. There's actually quite a few ideas, but Rogue letting it go through is actually a bit risky because the Grace Rhyme combo is going to be something very severe. Rogue says, you know what, we don't really think we need Grace to win. We'd rather make sure that we get our carry and jungler on picks that they're comfortable with. Team SoloMid picks up the Lyra, though.
We saw Team SoloMid play Rhyme and Jewel as a combination during the gauntlet, and it was terrifying. I'm not surprised to see focus on that Jewel just to get it out of the hands of TSM.
I mean, it seems like Rogue has really assigned the strength of that composition to the Jewel and the Rhyme rather than the Rhyme and the Grace. And I'm actually curious to see if Team SoloMid maybe picks Adagio here. They could go for Grace too, but either way, they have a strong double heal comp with a very tanky damage threat that perhaps melee carries like Blackfeather and Jewel are going to struggle to deal with.
I want to talk about as well how strong Lyra is going to be into this composition. First of all, you get the sustain, but the most important thing is this Bulwark. Both Jewel and Blackfeather want to dive. They want to use that mobility, and the Bulwark completely counters that.
And the other thing is that likely this can be a Crystal Power Blackfeather. There's a chance that Rogue switches it up, but I doubt it with the Lyra and the Rhyme CP Jewel most likely not securing any kills. But what that means is Jewel doesn't want to build a Poison Shiv. Jewel wants to go all damage. So once again, we're not going to have any kind of barrier and healing reduction coming out of Rogue reliably unless they go double weapon. The Idris pickup, though, this is a highly mobile front line to the extent to where when Lyra portals in, Rhyme goes through the portal, Idris is going to follow, and they're going to be able to chase down a lot of targets. Very different kind of composition. Once again, TSM pulling out something unique.
Yeah, and that's really been the story of TSM during the Gauntlet, and now I guess the Champion of Champions too. Rogue probably thrown for a bit of a loop here. I feel like I've been thrown for a bit of a loop by what TSM's doing. I think they used the preconceptions based on the Gauntlet to really set a precedent that they weren't going to follow through on.
Absolutely, but Rogue does still have Grace available to them if they think this is the priority pick. It's been a pretty long time since she's made it this far through the draft. She doesn't make it all the way through. Someone says, come on, Grace, get on the train, and we're not going to leave you behind. Rogue with the triple melee composition.
Absolutely. Well, that is going to be our draft as we jump on into this game. With the draft underway, it's time to jump into our game between Team SoloMid and Rogue. All right, well, we're going to fill in some time as there is a little bit of a delay on the stage. So let's talk about these compositions. Honestly, I'm a little bit terrified of this Rogue composition right here. A Blackfeather, a Jewel, and a Grace to keep them alive as they dive into the backline. This is a very aggressive composition and one that, if used effectively, has unbelievable burst damage.
Giving away a Grace was just such a bold decision, and it was interesting because it was a strategic decision by Rogue to say we're not going to pick Grace in the second pick. You know, when you do that, you're accepting that the other team is probably going to lock it in. But then when they didn't, they're like, okay, well, we get both the picks we wanted? Cool. You know, like Rogue couldn't, I think, have gotten more that they wanted or needed from the draft.
So I have to ask then, what is the plan for TSM to play around this composition? Because it feels like we're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet that Rogue has a very strong composition here.
I mean, I think the Idris pick comes in specifically because it's highly mobile and can dodge out a lot of things like the On Point, can dodge out the Holy Nova, and optimally, oftentimes, Idris will go the Shiv, right? So we're talking about reducing some of the barrier coming out, reducing some of that divine intervention healing, which is going to be really important, right? Because we talked about this before. Jewel, heavy plating. We've got barriers coming out of On Point on Blackfeather. You combine that with the directional damage coming out of Benediction. There's just so much potential defense.
Yeah.
So it is going to have to be a unique play strategy coming out of TSM to really kill somebody in time. I imagine they're going to focus the Blackfeather because Going to be Crystal Power, likely not going to build much defense.
I think they're going to need to build such that they're able to kind of just run in and siege bust, right? Like they're going to have to go in and find an opening somehow. Lyra portals are going to be critical. I do have to admit, like I was hoping to see Flash X on Lyra at some point in the series. I just expected it to be not against a Grace. So I believe that this is possible for Team SoloMid. I just think it has a level of execution required that is a little bit more nuanced. You know, Rogue, their game plan is not that complicated, whereas perhaps TSM's is. And typically in those situations, it can be tough to execute.
I mean, if there's a team that has to execute great situations like that, if there's a team that has to pull things out of the bag, TSM is definitely that team. We saw earlier on today, they were so close to losing against Ace Gaming. And then they flipped a light switch and suddenly they've changed their strategy. They changed how they were playing these team fights. They analyzed the situation and managed to turn things around. And that's something that we know TSM for. It's a team that never says die and always can think of new and interesting ways of playing these fights to make sure that they still have a chance.
I mean, there's some interesting interactions, too, coming into these hero compositions. Like, likely we'll see Best Chuck NA on this Idris. Chakram, it is a boomerang-style ability. It will go out and come back in, so perhaps if you got some quick fingers on Jewel, you'll be able to block both sides with your maximum defensive capabilities. But if not, when it comes back through, it's going to hit you on the backside. You're actually potentially going to take quite a bit of damage from that poke, and it is quite safe poke, too, if it is a weapon power Idris, because he can get out, he can get in, he can go wherever he wants, and Shimmer Strike is a great way to avoid a lot of the potential damage coming out of those Thunder Strikes.
Yeah, honestly, especially against double melee like this, Shimmer Strike is going to be such an important ability to be used right here for the likes of Best Chuck and 8. Now, we know that Best Chuck is an exceptional player. We know that his mechanics are... Honestly, he's having one of the best seasons of his entire career so far. So you expect great mechanics coming out from him. But it's going to be crucial that he can dodge, like, the Thunder Strikes, like, the damage coming out, the on-points that we saw Hammy obliterating with earlier on today. It's definitely a lot of weight on his shoulders to perform here on the stage.
One of the things I love, though, about the TSM composition, as much as we talk about the advantages Rogue might have, they're very much advantaged around their ability to kind of defensively position themselves to the extent where they're trying to stack barriers and they're trying to keep that plating on Jewel forward. But TSM, on the other hand, is rewarded for fighting. Idris gets barrier when he goes in before he's actually damaged, right? Rhyme gets his barriers from attacking and fighting and going in, and with those Lyra sigils speeding them up into the line of Rogue, I have a feeling TSM is going to be quite a scrappy team fight composition, so it's going to lead to quite an exciting game. And
that is something that plays into the way in which TSM has been playing recently. They have been quite aggressive. If you compare that to Rogue in their last game of this tournament, Rogue was very much more on the back foot, reacting to Cloud9 until the advantage they had was just overwhelming.
Absolutely, and we'll see whether either of these teams are going to be overwhelmed as we jump into TSM going up against Rogue. It's time to jump into game number 2 of our Champion of Champions tournament. It is time to jump into game number 2. It's time for TSM going up against Rogue. Rogue are 1-0 up already. We'll see whether they can win one more game and crown themselves the Champion of Champions. But TSM have been looking phenomenal. They qualified through the gauntlet. They looked amazing. And we'll see if they can keep up that performance coming into the Champion of Champions.
Key things to watch for me this game, definitely got to be Pon, the original. He did not play in game 1. They literally had an interview right afterwards where they were like, well, I hope he feels better for the next game. Apparently he already feels better. That was incredibly fast. Wish I had...
It's amazing what hope can do.
Yeah, wish I had that tenacity, but still, you know, if he isn't able to play up to standard, that could be Rogue throwing away the gauntlet, perhaps.
I mean, Rogue has set the standard in the Champion of Champions already, right? So Pon actually has to live up to the experience that Sibs created as a sub. He's actually the starter. We'll have to see how he does.
We certainly will, and a lot of pressure on Pon's shoulders to live up to the reputation that he's built for himself. This is a very influential player, one of the most influential players, I'd say, in North America, honestly. His control of the jungle is exceptional, but let's remember how Von C has been playing in the gauntlet, how they qualified here. Von C was instrumental for TSM. His control of the early game, especially when we talk about the middle Treant, was incredible, absolutely impeccable even. It's time to get on into the game, though. It's time for Team SoloMid against Rogue.
You know, whilst Vainglory has been absolutely critical to Team SoloMid, I want to see if he dies in a level 1 or 2 jungle fight, because he has done that pretty consistently through the gauntlet. And I do think Rogue is a team that won't just have that happen and then do nothing with the lead. Like, they will make something happen off the back of that. Vainglory has to be careful not to bite off too much here.
Definitely. The Rogue doing the smart thing here and not contesting the Elder Tree. And honestly, when you have a Lyra, it just a Rhyme in general on the enemy team, you can't really contest it early game. You're not going to have access to that kind of consistent barrier defense. So I do like the fact that Rogue is just playing a little bit normal.
You can't contest it unless, of course, you're old school on a weapon power petal. In which case, you stroll up and throw a cheeky auto attack. But
doesn't win you the game, though.
It does not win you the game. You're absolutely correct. So it is going to be TSM grabbing that one to start things off. We'll see whether Rogues start to contest them as this continues.
So far, this has been quite a passive game. We've seen some skirmishes up until this point previously, but not going to happen here. We do have a pause, though, while the teams sort out a quick issue.
Absolutely. So, exciting start to the game. We see an Elder Tree go the way of Team SoloMid. We see jungle camps go the way of Rogue. We are going to be restarting this match as nothing significant has happened just yet. The compositions will be staying the same, but there was a latency issue in the game, so we're just making sure that everything is fine and dandy before we kick this one off. Tournament integrity is key right here. There's a lot of money and pressure on the line for these teams, so definitely want this to be a fair match.
Also, I don't mind being kept in suspense. You know, it's just building up to that exciting moment where we actually kick things off and see if Rogue can lock in their spot here. This is giving them a little bit more time to think about their game plan and how these compositions are going to line up. You know, we've done a lot of talking about it up here on the desk, but I do wonder, you know, what is going to be the go signal for one of these teams here? I do feel like Team SoloMid wants to apply pressure a little earlier, perhaps. Their jungle duo is very effective in the early game.
Yeah, it really is very effective. And I think it's going to be one of these things where you just see a lot of control throughout the early game. Lyra's going to be able to drop down into the jungle and pop up into lane, throw the sigils down, drop the bulwark, really keep control on the entire map.
Absolutely. Well, we are just going to unpause the game. No need for a restart on this one. Everything has been resolved. We're ready to jump on in. As is Evil. He jumps on into Best Chuck's face right there, and Hammy gets a good bit of damage down.
Huge amount of healing able to come out of a Lyra early on here. Flash X basically undoing most of that trade for Best Chuck. I like this from Hammy. We saw a similar kind of play from Team SoloMid and Best Chuck when they picked up the Jewel before. He's really pressuring in the lane and keeping the focus there, as opposed to trying and, you know, maybe having Evol roam around in the jungle. I don't think that the Grace and the Blackfeather will be able to be effective against the Lyra and the Rhyme, so keeping Evol up here and pressuring Best Chuck with a very effective Jewel early game makes a lot of sense.
It definitely does, but this Lyra, a bit of a classic pairing with the Idris, definitely makes his early game weakness, not being able to really clear the minions, a little easier to handle.
Ooh, so close to Evil landing that Holy Nova. That could have been huge for them, but you're absolutely right. This Lyra pick just means that Best Chuck can be much more aggressive with clearing the wave and making sure that he doesn't just get shoved under tower.
Yeah, they're using the minion candy too, just to do a little extra damage every time Rogue does look to trade here. Lyra having that range is going to allow her to get a little poke off for free. Does have the slow on the second auto attack. Vainglory looking for the invade.
Look at this roam down from Evol. He predicted maybe that Vainglory was going to be moving in, but that prediction might not be enough. Vainglory actually doing a decent amount of damage back
Lyra
onto the side of Rogue. The heal from Lyra allowing Vainglory to keep this one going as well. Eventually, Rogue are forced back. A rotation out of the lane might be necessary here, unless Rogue are very confident they can get the Treant.
Nice.
Looks like they do. Pawn finding that is big. He might even want to chase with the regen, but TSM look like they want to fight. Evol going to be the target. Lots of damage going down there. Evol falls. First blood to TSM.
Certainly does. We are going to have a pause, unfortunately, coming on through here, but very good aggressive play coming out from Vainglory. It's what we've learned to expect from Vainglory, especially in this tournament specifically, and especially on this Rhyme. It's so difficult to duel against a Rhyme on his own, never mind with a Lyra backing him up.
I mean, we can talk about this a little bit as well, that the Healing Flask, when it was released in this patch, partners so well with Rhyme because it does provide you that barrier as well as healing. So you get a lot of healing underneath double barrier attribution when he does proc it. So it's really hard to cut him down in the early game when that item is on cooldown.
You know, I like some of the plays that we're seeing from Rogue here, but I think they're maybe anticipating being able to fight a little bit more effectively against TSM's pairing than they actually can. The rotation, for example, from Evol, predicting Vonsi to move in, you know that Vonsi's clear is faster than Blackfeather, so it's going to be easy for the Rhyme to make that play. Predicting it is a very heads-up thing to do, but that doesn't mean you can actually fight against it, unless you maybe rotate down Hammy as well.
Well, it's one of those moments where because they got the Treant and they got the healing, they were feeling a little too confident going back in, but the focus from TSM was on the member that didn't have the healing Treant, right? And that was Evol there trying to get out of that situation, the Root just holding him down into that Winter Spire.
And I think a key thing as well was they didn't actually have vision of the bush that Vonsi was in, right? I think they were maybe expecting Vonsi to have backed away and they were just chasing them out of the jungle. And then Evol has to face check that brush, and Vonsi's already there, so that becomes a very dicey situation.
I can imagine the dialogue, right? It's like, okay, we got the Treant. There's no way they're going to fight us because we've got that advantage. Let's go back, clear them out of the jungle. Our Treant should, like our forward Treant should be up soon. TSM just kind of next leveling that, honestly. This does set them off to a really nice spot in the game. Of course, as well, having picked up an early Treant, they're comfortably in the lead for the time being.
Yeah, they really are. But this is one of those situations where these teams can come back, right? You can't let these types of things really get you down in the early game. Sometimes things go your way, sometimes they don't. You just have to brush it off, go back to shop, get you what you need in an item, and then come back on the map and fight.
Absolutely, and you got to bear in mind, First Blood, it's a significant advantage for the next couple of minutes, but it's not a permanent advantage, right? If everything just resets, that advantage is kind of gone. So we need to see pressure coming out from TSM consistently now that they've got this advantage, whether they can keep things rolling on.
They've got the timers on many of the jungle camps, because Vonsi, I believe, also spotted out the back, bottom camp being taken by Pawn. So they know that. They know the back Treant, and they know, I think, probably the front Treant, or at least they will soon, on their way out. So if TSM wants, they can really start to lay the pain down onto Rogue. They just need to keep playing based on the timers that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I have to ask you guys, coming into this game, especially with things like pauses, things like technical difficulties, how much do you think this is going to affect the mentalities of these players on the stage? I mean, Fuji, you've been a player yourself. What's it like being sat underneath those lights and kind of just waiting for your opportunity?
I definitely think for a team like TSM that comes up to the stage, it's not going to affect them as much because they were not on the momentum swing, right? We have Rogue that just took down the C9. Arguably, you could see their faces when it happened. They weren't really sure probably they were going to be able to do it. They had a sub in that game. They were smiling, cheering, hugging it out. They felt good coming into this game. They told us that directly. But this kind of stuff can add a hiccup to it. You got this kind of momentum, this passion. You're ready to get into the match. But then the slowdown can really kind of curb that enthusiasm.
Yeah, it certainly can. We'll see whether that enthusiasm is going to be able to live on as we manage to get things sorted and go back on into game. Hopefully the lights here in Las Vegas aren't too bright for the players. That is something that Las Vegas is definitely known for, the neon streets, as it were. But these guys certainly not feeling starstruck right now, as we've had a good performance coming out from both of these teams across the course of today. And I'm curious to see how this one is going to continue to pan out once everything is resolved. And I have to wonder how Rogue are going to go about dealing with this situation of Vonsi's Rhyme, because I mean, we can talk about the micro of that fight. We can talk about how that's going to affect the next minute or so of the game, right? But beyond that, they still have an issue of this Rhyme Lyra being so difficult to deal with. And how much of your jungle can you afford to just concede to that?
Honestly, not that much. And I think that they need Hammy to help them deal with the pressure. Again, I think TSM's doing it wrong if they don't play off the timers that they've gotten from that jungle invade. They have all the tools they need to force the issue, right? It's very easy, perhaps in your solo queue games, you're up against a Lyra Rhyme in the jungle and they're just not doing that much to you. They're kind of farming their own jungle. Maybe Lyra's in the lane and you're like, okay, well, I'll just farm up and eventually I'll be able to deal with them. But if TSM forces the issue, if they keep going in and invading on the camps and stealing them away, eventually Rogue has to say enough's enough. And at that point, you get to leverage the advantage you have compositionally as TSM and try and snowball the lead.
Well, I mean, that's what you should do, right? When you go in, you have a successful invade, you want to actually not go back and clear your entire jungle. It's a bit counterintuitive, perhaps, for people that are like, oh, we just got a kill, we just got some farm, let's go back home, let's buy maybe one new tier 1 item, head back out to our own jungle. On the contrary, you actually just want to clear maybe the front half of your own jungle and then go back in on that invade. You will have rotation priority from the lane most likely because they dropped 2. Means you're going to get pushed in. And Jewel, she doesn't really want to rotate. Like Hammy, we talked about, maybe he has to. And like with Rhyme invading, you kind of need some extra damage there to really push him out. But Jewel's a hard scaling weapon hero that needs those items to really do damage, and every single time he has to drop out of the lane, it's an opportunity to miss.
One option for them could be, you know, I don't know exactly how convinced I am of this, but I'm kind of just spitballing at this point. Maybe they just sort of set Hammy up to take jungle farm too. And that's almost the excuse for having him in the jungle, right? Because, like you said, hyper carry. This is a pick that can just demolish teams pretty much single-handedly with a couple of items. We do occasionally see, like with a Scarf, for example, the team letting that carry in the lane take jungle camps too, to really just push the tempo. If you do that and you stay as a unit and you stay as 3, that does neutralize a little bit some of the advantages that the Rhyme-Lyra combination in the jungle has.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's always terrifying, too, when the enemy is so confident to be back in your own jungle. You're just trying to farm. You're trying to just get your CS to get your items, and they're knocking on your back door. They've already entered your home at this point.
You're just desperate for the 4-minute mark at that stage. You just want that sentry to arrive, so you just feel a little bit safer at night when you're trying to go to sleep in your jungle. Or when you're trying to play Vainglory instead. I want to talk a little bit about the precedent that this game is actually going to set for not just this tournament, also the Vainglory 8 in general. Let's bear in mind that Cloud9, TSM, and Rogue are kind of the top 3 teams in North America right now, and Rogue have been trying to fight for that title. TSM and Cloud9 have been the top teams for a very long time in North America, and Rogue are looking to build a legacy for themselves. They've just beaten Cloud9. They're looking to try and take on TSM as well. If they can do it here, looking towards the next week of the Vainglory 8, Rogue are actually in with a huge shot at managing to grab themselves that world spot. And we've kind of had a preview of Worlds with our gauntlet earlier. We could well see Rogue as a favorite going towards the world spot.
That'd actually be pretty crazy, considering the fact that TSM and Cloud9 have been so dominant for so long. I do think that it's possible, though. Rogue seems like they're in a good place right now, at least on the current update. I mean, keeping in mind, of course, that when we head back to the VG8, things will change, and maybe a new meta will develop as a result, especially with the Crystal Power items being so massively changed. But Rogue are a very strong team, and I would expect them to learn a lot from this experience, too. We mentioned earlier on the fact that they haven't had quite the same quantity of live experience as these other teams. This is valuable for them for that very reason. It's going to be a team bonding experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you do actually qualify for Worlds, it's not just about getting there, because then the thirst becomes bigger, right? You need to quench it with some victories at Worlds. You're going to be on the biggest stage of your career at that point. So anytime you get live stage environment practice, you have to take it seriously. You have to really get into the zone, tune out everything that's going on around you, and really focus in on what your goals are as a team. Your communication, your mentality, your strategy, and execution across the board needs to be as close to perfect as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that Worlds would be the biggest stage of their career, or their career so far. Honestly, it could be the biggest stage of their career, full stop. There is no bigger stage than Worlds, except obviously it kind of gets bigger and bigger each year. So these teams, they're not just fighting for that spot, like you say, to get there. They want to perform. They want to be the winners, and especially a team like TSM. They went to Worlds. They went all the way to the final against Rox Armada last year, and they were pipped to the post at the last moment there. It was a 4-2 scoreline in a best-of-7 in the final, in case you guys missed it. And honestly, they are hungry for that again. They don't want to let that get away. They want a second chance at redemption there, and they've just beaten the #1 seed EA team right now. They are feeling confident that if they do go to Worlds, they could be a favorite, but they've got to get there first.
And you've got to keep in mind as well that this is a team that Worlds was a given for them last year very early on. This year, they haven't qualified yet. Like, they not only want that chance of redemption, they have to get that chance at redemption first. And I know Team SoloMid is a very motivated team. This kind of thing is only going to motivate them more. The thirst for competition is hard with them.
I mean, it has to be heartbreaking, right? You win Split 1 and Split 2 of Spring. You go to the Unified Championship and get knocked out in the semis. You win Split 1 and Split 2 of Summer. Go to the Unified Championship, get knocked out in the semis. And at this point, it's all about autumn season. But it's not just anymore about you winning. It's about all these other teams wanting it too, because things are just different in the seasonal play. TSM was dominating all year. They were not dominating as much in the autumn season, and this is the time you really want to do so. There's no live stage. It's whoever comes out on top at the end of Split 2 goes to Worlds, and there's a lot of really good-looking teams.
Yeah, there certainly are. And I mean, you mentioned one of the kind of devastating things for Team SoloMid when it came to the Summer Championships wasn't just the fact that they lost in the semi-final. It was that they never got an opportunity to exact their revenge on Cloud9. They were knocked out by Cloud9 way back in London. Then when we got to LA, they didn't get to face Cloud9 at all. They were knocked out by Tribe instead. So it's like,
what are you doing? You took our chance away.
Yeah, exactly. They never got their opportunity in the first place. So now this tournament, and in fact the third game in this round robin, will be TSM going up against Cloud9. It's kind of the classic matchup of North America.
Imagine how satisfying it would be if they've won this game and then they get to win the whole thing by beating Cloud9. That is the ultimate for TSM, I'm sure.
Especially with the history that these two teams have. Even just the players, Gabe Vizzle and FlashX specifically, they're the captains for their respective teams in both senses of the world, both in-game and out of game. So it's kind of like it's a very personal matchup at this stage after they've battled so many times before and with so much on the line.
I mean, it's a lot to push yourself to these limits, right? I mean, we're talking about hours and hours of practice. We come to Las Vegas, they run through the entire gauntlet, and this is their chance, really, to kind of nail down a victory, really give them the momentum going into autumn season because they need it. They're not first right now in the standings, and Mobile Masters is such a great opportunity for them to really hone the skills before that goes into a completely new patch, new meta around the corner. So this is the last time to shine in 2.8 before things kick off on 2.9 next week.
There's a whole 4 weeks left as well. I mean, just having momentum going into the next split when a lot of teams have been on break instead is also very critical.
All right, well, we do have a little bit of an update on this first game because we've had a couple of issues coming on into this one. We are going to be restarting the game. So the draft is going to remain the same, but that cheeky Elder Tree and that cheeky First Blood that TSM managed to grab, not going to be counting on this one as there were a few issues at the start of things. Now we are going to step away for a couple of minutes and we're going to be back with our game between Team SoloMid and Rogue. Welcome back to the Amazon Mobile Masters Las Vegas, brought to you by Pete's Cold Brew and Amazon Fire. We are ready to get into TSM versus Rogue. We finished the draft and we're ready to jump on into this game. I want to talk about this composition we've got coming out from Rogue here. Very heavy dive composition. We've got a dual black feather and then a grace to round that out. It's going to be a powerful composition.
Powerful composition indeed, Munchables. Hammy known for this jewel upon the original, coming in, feeling better to play this game. And of course, Evol, well known for his ability to block almost anything and then keep his teammates in the battle. So on this grace, powerful pickup.
Let's see what happens with this Elder Treant at the beginning of the game here. Obviously pretty difficult to contest against the Rhyme and the Lyra. They are not going to take very much damage in an early game fight, so unsurprisingly, Rogue aren't really trying to address that take from TSM.
Yeah, I like this from Rogue. They just know that they're not quite strong enough to contest against the Rhyme on that Elder Treant, so smart decision for them. Also, Black Feather does not have the fastest clear speed, so he really needs to get through the jungle. Grace is going to help him do that. That way he doesn't get too far behind this Rhyme pick.
Now, I want to visit a point that you just mentioned there, Fuji, right towards the intro, when you mentioned Evol, renowned for great crucibles, renowned for his mechanical play. I was talking to him earlier on today, and he was mentioning this exact topic on how a lot of that isn't actually down to your reaction speed. It's not down to being able to see how a fight's going and play it out according to that. It's down to playing so many fights that you've seen each and every single situation before. You're already all looking out to block that ability. So when it happens, he's already ready and waiting for that.
Yeah, predictive behavior. We've seen many times in the past where Evol will queue up an ability and it almost seems instantaneous, but it's just because he knows it's coming, right? Like he knows it is on the way and he has to help his team survive. Of course, we are going to have another Elder Treant going over to Rhyme here. Rogue does need to be careful. Yes, it is true that you don't want to contest it, but you also don't want to give it over for free. If you can find a way to be there, find the right timing, try to steal it away, that certainly will help.
Yeah, one thing though that Rogue is doing nicely here is that they are pushing in Best Chuck, kind of forcing him to eat some minion damage if he doesn't want the wave to actually crash into his turret here. And that's, you know, that's at least a little something in exchange for the fact that FlashX moved down to help secure the Treant for sure. So far, though, quite a passive game here. 2.5 minutes in. We've seen some pretty explosive ones. This is definitely not one of those games.
Yeah, I mean,
not just yet, at least.
Exactly. I was going to say these compositions explode, but just not this early in the game. Idris, of course, does take quite a while to come online. Jewel as well. The playmaking capability early game is really based on this Rhyme pick as we see Von C going in.
Yeah, Von C being very threatening to Pawn the original here.
Ooh.
Did he actually take that? No,
It was Pawn.
Pawn got it.
Pawn managed to grab that one. Evol in a little bit of trouble, though. He's very low on HP. Will has to use his flask. It's not enough. Flash X grabs the kill for himself. Very nice play out of Team SoloMid.
Man, that's rough. He burned the 120-second cooldown of that as well. Now Best Chuck with the rotate down does have to be careful, but you can see the Team SoloMid is doing everything they can to stop Pawn the original from farming. So far, it was only that one Treant and the kill. Flash X always got to be careful.
Jump up.
Look at this damage coming out here. Pawn doing a huge amount, and Hammy going to be able to steal the credit for that one. Grabs himself a kill. Evens the scoreboard up.
Essentially getting Goomba stomped there in the bush. No way to get out of it. Flash X not having the boots. But yeah, we talked a little bit about this in other games. When you actually successfully take away a camp, sometimes you get a sense of false confidence, right? Like it's one of these moments where, yes, that actually was the victory. You don't want to go back in afterwards. You say, congratulations, we secured our own jungle. We need to now find another route in order to contest the rest of our camps. Going straight back in oftentimes puts you in a bad spot. Once again, this Rhyme, his ability to just get the speed boost from Imperial Sigil, the heal, it's just a lot to deal with.
We do now have Crucible picked up on Flash X, yet again with his Lyra going for that prior to the Fountain. Does mean that he's going to be much tankier than you might expect at this stage of the game, but in overall skirmish, he's going to be probably a little less effective at keeping his teammates alive. Pawn the original runs into Flash.
And Pawn is loving just hitting Flash as much as he can, just getting that damage down before the fights truly begin. Von C's behind him, but he's just going for the kill onto Flash. He's looking for his solo kill right here, and he will be able to find it. Trades his own life for it, though. Hammy jumps in, but it's too little too late.
That's an interesting trade to be so bold for, because it is, you know, trading a captain for a carry. which is kind of scary.
I mean, taking a little more turret damage than I think he thought he was going to. Of course, giving that kill over to Best Chuck, not the person you want to give kills to. He's super consistent, an amazing farmer in killing these lane minions and really getting his gold up there, but now we're just kind of expediting him to some of those power spikes it normally takes a little longer to get to. He does have enough gold, actually, to buy a Sorrow Blade, which will increase his ability to, instead of rolling around the map, start being able to dash around the map. So gap close skill there will be quite an advantage. Of course, we do have Von C sitting level 6 as well. Valkyrie, a big component potential for them to be able to win and really knock down one of these members of Rogue. We'll have to see if he uses it on a gank or if he just goes for the invade.
Von C certainly making his way up for the gank now, coming in from the flank, but Rogue reacts quickly enough, having had Evil in the bush. The Team SoloMid do not decide to commit for the fight. They've shoved up the wave a little bit, now rotating down as 3, have a good window of opportunity to shop here safely.
Going for these front 2 camps, oftentimes skipped by people in competitive play simply just because the value is a bit low, but if you have a chance to pick them up for free and it doesn't slow down any of your rotations, you definitely should do so. A little experience, a little bit of gold, but it definitely does go a long way at these type of competitive levels.
And I think a key thing as well is, especially your opponent's front camp, you can, even though it's not that significant of a gold lead for yourself, if you can consistently take that camp, that can be 200, 300, 400 gold across the course of the game, which can become very significant.
Yeah, I mean, when you kill both of the front camps, so you actually have Evolve going in a little bit here, but looks like they're just going to back up. But yeah, 50 gold from the front 2 camps, that's 2 flares that could potentially win you an entire game, right? So every little bit of gold does count.
All right, we got Pawn the Original now on the flank for Rogue. I don't think Rogue wants to initiate a fight unless they see a great pick available, but they definitely want to dissuade TSM from committing here to the turret. And when you burn a Bright Bulwark, that is a good indication that you're doing a nice job of dissuading Team SoloMid there. It's pretty difficult for Rogue to initiate when that's up, but when it's down, definitely there's windows of opportunity.
Absolutely. You have to see Pawn the Original really hit his on point here to make sure he doesn't take too much damage. Maybe just clearing the wave with the big red button there, but a lot of poke coming out of TSM with these Winter Spires and Chakrams.
There is no fountain on the side of TSM, so they have to be a little bit careful. Flasks are being used just to keep them moving and able to siege more. Rogue are losing out a little bit in terms of just having minions die to the turret and the jungle be stolen away potentially here, although Von C does not get that one. Finds a route onto Evol, but they just can't keep chasing. Meanwhile, what? Best Chuck manages to find a pick on a Hammy. What was he doing rotating down by himself?
I have a feeling Hammy must have not been paying attention too close to Best Chuck's ability to dive him, but Best Chuck was quite strong just then, so I'm not really sure why Hammy thought he needed to go down to help. His teammate actually got out with the healing camp, so they seem to be in good condition. But of course, Von C not able to continue to apply pressure. If he doesn't actually get the last hit, a lot of times he uses a decent amount of his energy just to be there to begin with, so he can't continue that aggression.
Now, I want to ask you guys, we've talked about this composition from Rogue and how it's an explosive composition, but not just yet. At what point does this composition come online? When are we expecting Rogue to actually be looking for the fights instead of just waiting and defending against TSM?
At least one more item needs to be there for Hammy, for him to be able to go in and consistently hit those big crits. Right now, the actual crit chance that he has isn't that crazy. Pawn the Original arguably already does some pretty good damage, but he does want a little bit more before they commit fully to these fights. As well, you know, Grace, maybe an Echo is a big spike for Rogue. There's a few different opportunities they have. Oh, that's going to be the route, though.
This could be big trouble right here for Rogue, as it's already going to be Hammy dropping in this fight. Evol might be the next one to follow. There's a double kill coming through for Von C. Are they going to look for a dive here? Are they going to look to finish out the ace? They'd only have 5 seconds to do it, so I think it's best that they back away, but they can look for a gold mine.
Yeah, it's 400 gold per individual if they do secure this, but once again, Rogue just kind of overstepping there a little bit. Von C doing so much work with these roots. Like, he's just locking everybody down. We actually saw Hammy try to get out, but Pawn, what are you doing, buddy?
Me. Pawn the Original, he's going to get slowed by the Lyra. Oh, he gets the shield, so close to surviving. Best Chuck now in trouble. In the meantime, the gold mine has gone down, but Flash X walks away with his life. It's a 1-for-1 trade.
I like how Von C finishes the gold mine and goes and shops during this whole time. He's like, guys, what are you doing up there?
Guys, you're distracting me from my farm. Can you please be reasonable?
Interesting pickup here of a tension bow. A little bit later than you might expect to see one from Best Chuck NA. This is going to give an immediate power spike if he wants to fight right away upon getting back from base, possibly. Rogue, they're being fairly aggressive here, though. Moving quite far up, given that they have no turret.
I have to say, Big Red Button is one of the most underwhelming abilities when you're playing Weapon Power Duel. Like, it's so huge and so explosive, and then just like ticks this tiny little bit of damage onto VonC.
It's pretty good for long distance wave clear, I guess. So there's always a couple of reasons to put a few points in it.
It's intentionally subversive, right? That you expect the Big Red Button to do something destructive. And
also, it moves your character model slightly. So if you really need style points and you got to dodge a skill shot, you can always use that just to juke to one side.
That is an option.
I want to see someone do that.
If someone
very
did that
badly
in professional play, I would take my hat off to that person.
Yes, moving backwards while rooted feels good, man. Well, we start looking how this game is playing out here. Some items coming online. War Treads on Evol will allow Rogue to reposition quite well, but this Tension Bow is going to give a lot of pierce, so his best Chuck gets into the back line, or if he specifically can get behind Jewel, we're see a lot of damage.
That's going to be the initiation with the Arcane Passage. A very quick kill coming in as VonC annihilates Pawn, the original. Pawn has had a very tough time finding farm this game, sitting 20 below VonC. You can see it in how squishy he is, how unable he is to get out of there. Hammy, look at the damage! That's going to be best Chuck chasing down kill number 2. This is a tough spot as well. Evol going to need to back on out of there. TSM are looking very dominant in this game.
Honestly, if anyone ever questions the burst available from Ryman and Idris around the mid stages of the game, like, you just, like, look at those kills. Evol doesn't even get a chance to use his ultimate, his Divine Intervention, and it's such a game-breaking ability, such a game-changing ability. And he just doesn't even have time because of how fast his carries are dropping. Yeah,
I mean, one of the major issues is that Lyra just continues to sustain the poke damage coming from Rogue, but they don't have the same type of sustain. Nice bulwark there from Flash to keep them from contesting that gold mine. Well done on that hero. Jackson, you said it. Keep him off Lyra. They didn't do it. He's making plays all game long, keeping these sigils down and using his bulwark to really zone out the ability for Blackfeather to use his Rose Offensive, for Evol to use Benediction, for Jewel to be able to jump around.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about, I want to kind of recap on what's been going on, because it's felt like a fairly slow game. Even though we have had some big fights now, it's actually a huge goal lead in favor of Team SoloMid, 6,500 ahead of their opponents in Rogue, and that's a very significant lead to have at 12 minutes into the game.
I mean, it's very difficult, as we've mentioned before, for Rogue to do things early on into the game, but it's also quite easy for TSM to do them, so that disparity is big enough that you would expect to see a large gold lead. Maybe not this large, but certainly, you know, this is an expected result. It really does rely now for Rogue on surviving a couple more team fights here and there, trying to get a few more items in the bank. Pawn, the original especially, is just massively behind compared to VonC. Hammy, honestly, not so far behind that he can't be impactful. I would expect him to be making big fights happen at 3 items. Evol needs to shop, though. He needs that Echo. He's got the money for it.
I think one thing we have to bear in mind as well is that Hammy is on Jewel. First of all, we've seen Hammy have great success on Jewel in the past, but also just Jewel as a hero can individually win games. You can find 1v3 situations on Jewel. You have that tankiness and you have a huge amount of damage. And look at this out of TSM. A cheeky death brush waiting to happen right here. We'll see if anyone face checks this.
People don't use this bush enough, but it is going to be scouted out. I believe that Flare was able to see it, so Rogue know what's up. FlashX might just pull the trigger regardless with an Arcane Passage jumping in.
Certainly going for that one, but Rogue skedaddle on out of there. They're having none of it. They are going to be able to escape with their lives. And actually, it's Rogue engaging on the fight. VonC going to be stunned up here. Best Chuck got a little bit low, but will be healed up by the Lyra once again. Big Red Button just going to clear away the minion wave. And it looks like that's all she wrote for that fight.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those moments where you really have to be careful as Rogue. VonC just picked up a Broken Myth before actually coming into the section of the map, so he's incredibly strong. Obviously, best Chuck in A as well, sitting on about 1,500 gold here, wanting to shop, but they might just fight instead.
Yeah, VonC's already taken quite a lot of damage off the back of this initiation, though he's got to be careful, just barely alive. Is able to turn things around, finds 2 quick kills. TSM on the hunt for the 3rd pawn. The original cannot get out of there. Team SoloMid at 11-3 are really trying to lock this game in.
I mean, the amount of damage that was done there, we talked about this Poison Shiv being such a huge pickup for a weapon power carry when you play into these barrier-style defensive compositions. Evol used Echo on Divine Intervention, but was not able to use it twice. They killed him through it the first time, which is difficult to do, to say the least, but that Valkyrie coming out of Rhyme really sealed the deal, stunning and just slowing everybody down immensely.
We're 30 seconds now from Kraken being on the map. Team SoloMid have a dominant amount of pressure on it. They've got scout traps all over the place. It's going to be really hard for Rogue to contest this safely or even know if it's being taken.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick look at that triple kill once again, because this was such a close fight to going Rogue's way, but just not close enough.
Yeah, not close enough at all. We actually see Evil getting really caught out here and rooted. I mean, the damage coming out in the barriers from Von C just too much because of their gold lead for them to be able to really chunk down. If Rogue was even 2,000 to 3,000 gold closer by comparison, they might have actually been able to have taken that team fight, but just not quite there yet. Rogue really on the back foot here as we look at an 11-3 scoreline.
I love how as well at the back of that, at the tail end of that fight, you saw Von C. He knows that his team has got that other kill. Immediately just goes and starts to take the back camp. Just he's like looking for every single bit of anything he can find. Huge damage going out from Best Chuck here onto Hammy. That forces everybody away, and it means that TSM grab a Kraken, and they might just grab a fight.
Yeah, very nice arcane passage in from Flash X. They wanted to go for this immediately off the back of that Kraken. They find 2 kills. Evil, the last man standing, the captain for Rogue, will not be able to defend the base. He goes down. It's an ace for Team SoloMid. It's a Kraken, and it's very likely going to be the game.
This could be a fantastic start to the tournament for the likes of Team SoloMid. We already saw Rogue take 1 game, but that means that they are going to be 1-1 so far, which means that our next game will be the decider. Team SoloMid taking down Rogue with a convincing victory.